Talk about inspirational leadership and to look at, I did a study a couple of years ago of a number of organisations who really do things well, and I was particularly interested in some of the leaders who ran their organisations, and I studied the actual leaders, and the things that came out of that were these. I mean, we can read books and look at, you know, what are characteristics of leaders, but in practice I actually saw these 6 things really coming up very strongly. To remember as leaders that we've got to show our passion, we've got to keep that energy up so that people are drawn like a current with us, and it's not just in the speaking, it's in the emails, it's in the strategies, it's in the activities. It really makes them feel good, having a positive environment, providing that coaching and training. I've given you some suggestions there. Definitely fun times together. The best organisations that I found celebrated together, they did things, they did social things, they had really in the midst of incredibly intensive work, they would take these 5 or 10 minute celebrations and make them really powerful, or they'd have a dinner once every so often and get people together, or they'd have a family picnic, or they would just, you know, and they would have 1 or more people responsible for that and actually drive it. And I saw it again and again in the best organisations, and I think sometimes we get so busy we put that to the side, and we've got to come back to that as a way to share. And invariably you set it out as fun and we're not going to talk work. Well, you end up talking work and you probably find out really powerful things and you come up with great ideas, because it's another way to meet together without the pressure of work. We're saying we won't talk work, but we do talk work, and we talk it in a free and great environment. Sharing your vision, absolutely important. The best organisations have a clearly spelled out vision. Many of them have their values clearly identified. Seek, for example, have 4 values, just 4 single words, which just works so beautifully, and they assess people at their performance review 50% on whether they deliver to the values, which is remarkable. They also interview and select people for the values, which dovetails into everything we're talking about. Negative people pull down the environment, jaded, burnt out people, and we know that. So we can actually select for more positive attributes and tie it to our values and our vision. We also can find out what are the vision or the career plans for individuals. And unlike 10 or more years ago, where nobody ever said they were planning to leave the place that they worked, or that they wanted to go overseas, or they wanted to set up their own consulting business. Everybody kept that hidden. You would never tell your employer. Now to be open and to actually share and understand the goals of an individual and work in with that and say, well, if you do this project, this is going to help you get the skills that you'll need going forward. And that leads to a motivated workforce.
Today, you early on in one of your talks, you said your success begins with the way you think. Could you explain that a bit, please?
Okay, the way that we think really has an impact on the way that we act and the way that we perform. And if we have in our head a range of negative scripts that say, oh, this is too hard, or I won't be able to get it done, or I'm exhausted, then the likelihood is that's going to have a big impact. So we really, especially for leaders, need to choose that attitude that we want to have.
Okay, and so if you do notice that you have a lot of negative scripts in your head, how can you turn those around?
What you need to do is rewrite those negative scripts, and part of it is to recognise that you even have those negative scripts, and then to be able to edit them and to really say, well, okay, that's not the way I'm going to think anymore. And it's not as simple as saying, well, I'm always tired, so I won't be tired. It's really to think them through and to come up with new scripts that are quite positive.
Oh, okay. So could you give me an example of something that a leader might reframe or rethink, a negative thought that a leader might have about his or her performance? and what exactly he would reword it to say?
Well, one of the common things that a lot of leaders are saying at the moment is, I haven't got enough time, we're under pressure, we're overloaded, we haven't got enough staff, we haven't got enough resources, there's not enough budget. And it's really to recognise that that kind of talk permeates the culture, and staff start saying, we're under pressure, there's a lot of, and suddenly there's a time, culture, pressure syndrome that happens. So what's important is for a leader to recognise, because they are leading by example and things are picked up. So if they're in a bad mood, people will follow suit.
So the leaders need to model what they want the team to be like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. You also talked about one of the
first things that you need to do is to set up a culture of giving and receiving feedback. So you've got to promote it, and you've got to say to staff, look, positive feedback makes us feel good, constructive feedback improves performance. Let's make sure we agree that we're all going to give and receive feedback. So you've got to promote that in the culture. Then when you go to give feedback, it's expected, it's day to day, people don't feel they're being singled out, and it's not something that, results in being negative politics. It's actually part of improving performance. And the way to do it is to simply give very specific examples and look together at how to change.
You also talked about giving balanced feedback. How does that work?
Well, when you give constructive feedback, I think it's very important to remind yourself to look for positives and give positive feedback at the same time, because there's evidence that we don't give enough positive feedback.
Right. What happens when we get positive feedback? What happens inside?
It's fantastic. Positive feedback makes us feel good, it boosts morale, it makes us feel that energy to keep on going, and so it's important, and definitely as leaders we need to give more of that positive feedback, acknowledgement, recognition.
Okay. And as a leader who models appropriate behaviour, what advice would you give to a leader dealing with an employee who's very angry?
When someone's very angry, you want to let them vent and find out what the reasons are for their anger, and to not make assumptions, to not react to the anger, to stay calm, to really try and model a calm way, and to say things like, let's try and work this out together so that we can get past it.
So listening skills then are very important for leadership.
Listening is one of the most criticised skills. A lot of people will say their managers are bad listeners, and managers like to do a lot of talking. So it's something we have to control as managers, that we know a lot of things, we want to say a lot of things, but we've also got to pull back and know when to listen.
And you linked listening with empathy. So what is the usefulness of empathy in a leader?
Sometimes people don't verbalise exactly what's going on. So to be able to kind of pick up a theme and to say, look, I can see you're frustrated, I can hear that you're angry, I can understand how difficult it must be going through this when you weren't expecting it. To just say that, to pick up on a theme, to pick up on a feeling, people then feel that somebody's taking interest, somebody cares.
And finally, if there was one idea that you would like us all to take away from listening to you today, what would that be?
That you can control the culture around you by choosing what it is and then working towards achieving it.